I took 9 APs in high school, and did any of them fulfill my class requirements at Stanford? No. Hey guys, I'm Dylan, and today's video is for all my high schoolers out there who are wondering if they should take AP classes even if colleges don't accept the credit. Before we get started, there is a website called Unimetrics, which is a low-cost college application service. Also, if you want to be entered into a giveaway for a free consultation for any of the top 20 colleges, all you have to do is register on their website and then use my referral code and then ask at least one question on the public forum. That's it. They'll be choosing one winner who completes these tasks. Okay, moving on. So first of all schools are different in terms of what they will and won't accept. So it's important to look into the schools that you are thinking about to see what their requirements are for AP credit. For some schools, taking AP classes is really great because it saves you the time and the money of taking the classes in college because you'll no longer have to do that because you already fulfilled the credit when you're in high school. But then other universities just don't care and want you to retake their classes anyways. So first I'm going to explain the AP classes that I took and the scores that I got, and then how that transitioned over to Stanford. So I got a 3 in AP World History, and I got 5s in AP Studio Art Drawing, AP Studio Art Design, AP Calculus AB, AP US History, AP Psych, and AP Stats. And I chose not to take the tests for AP English Language and AP Environmental Science. First of all, why did I decide not to take those tests? Well, it was mainly because I did not feel prepared enough. I feel like my teachers or my school just didn't give a good enough education for that specific AP, so I did not feel like I would do well on the test and I didn't want it to look bad. But then also knowing that I probably wouldn't have gotten a good score, I did not want to pay the money for the AP tests. People often wonder, and people often say, does that look bad in college admissions? Does it look bad to not take the AP test that you took the class in? Is it a sentence? Does it look bad to take an AP class but not take the AP test? And my answer is honestly, I don't really know, but I understand both sides of the story. On one hand, it could look bad because it looks like you are just taking the AP class to look good or whatever, but you're not actually putting in the work and effort that it takes to actually challenge yourself and test the content that you've actually learned. But then on the other hand, my situation, I didn't feel prepared. I didn't think the teachers did a great job of teaching the content. I didn't want to pay the money. So all of these things came into play. But in the end, obviously I got into Stanford, so I guess it wasn't that much of a big deal, but I do think it's better not to do that. If you can take the test and you feel confident in all of those things, then I recommend, yes, take the test. But also I only did that for 2 out of my 9 APs, so I don't think it's that bad. But it would have looked definitely bad if I didn't take the test for any of them. Okay, so how did these classes actually pay off by the time I went to Stanford? Well, so Stanford only accepts certain APs. There's a whole big list I'm looking at here, so I'll read it off to you and then explain. You have to have gotten a 5 in AP Calculus AB, a 4 or 5 for Calculus BC, a 5 in AP Chemistry, a 5 in Chinese Language and Culture, a 4 or a 5 in Computer Science A, a 4 or a 5 in Computer Science Principles, a 5 in French Language, a 5 in Italian Language and Culture, a 5 in German Language, a 5 in Japanese Language and Culture, a 5 in Latin, a 4 or 5 for Physics C Mechanics, also a 4 or 5 for Physics C Electricity and Magnetism, or a 5 in Spanish Language. Those are the only APs that Stanford accepts credit for. And a lot of schools are similar, so like I said, look at their website and see what their requirements are. Now let's think about the classes that I took in comparison to this list. The only class from this list that I actually took was AP Calculus AB. The thing is, it really doesn't matter that I took that because that's only if I'm going to take math. And as of now, on the track that I'm on, I do not plan on taking math in college. Now I know I've talked about this in some of my other videos, but the general requirements for Stanford are a little different in that they're not take a math, take a science, take a history. They have different labels for their classes, so you can get away with fulfilling requirements in very different ways. But for Stanford specifically, AP classes will not cover any of your general ed requirements. So the thing is, I'm not going to take math, so this doesn't really matter for me, and it does not fulfill any of my requirements that I have to take in college. Also, if you are going to take math or a language, at Stanford specifically, let's talk about, you're going to have to take a placement test whether or not you got a great score on the AP test. So if I wanted, I could like study really hard and remember all the content again and take the placement exam, place into a higher math level, and I can do it that way, but like that still doesn't really like the APs, it just doesn't really matter in this case. So for Stanford, I think the APs that actually count towards credit is going to be the ones that are focused in math, focused in computer science, and a language. Now, the next question you might be wondering is, should you take AP classes at all then? And here's the thing. I think what we need to do in high school, because I was like this way too, is reshift our focus in terms of what AP classes mean. I always thought that taking AP classes was purposefully to fulfill a credit in college. And yes, like I said, sometimes that does work out and that's great. But there are other reasons why it might be a good idea for you to take AP classes. And one of those reasons is college admissions and rigor, because colleges look at the rigor of the classes that you are taking to see if you are pushing yourself and challenging yourself to the appropriate level, of course, and basically taking advantage of your education. If you watch my How I Actually Got Into Stanford video, you will see that Stanford on my actual application wrote down a category for rigor and gave me a score for that based on the classes that I took in high school. So I would recommend taking AP classes not just for the credit, but also to get into certain colleges that require a rigorous class schedule. Now, AP classes is definitely not for everyone, and it's totally fine to not take AP classes if that just doesn't work for you. Sometimes things can be really challenging and it's a lot to handle. It's a big workload. And if that's too much for you, then that is totally fine. But that does bring me to my next point about another reason why you might want to take an AP class is because it challenges you and it pushes you and you learn a lot through the process and gain really valuable skills that will help you in the future. Of course, you learn the content, the knowledge, which may or may not be applied into your life. You might develop skills relating to your work ethic, time management, organization skills. For me, that's really how I learned how to get organized and stay on top of my schedule and learn how to juggle a million things at once. It was by taking these challenging classes that, yeah, I did get stressed, but then I had to sit down and rethink how I was going to do this and how I was going to handle all the tasks that I had to do. And so I created to-do lists. I learned how to take notes in a system that worked for me. For me, I do it online, other people handwrite. And my system of studying, I actually created a whole new system for what worked for me for every AP class, pretty much. For example, for AP Calculus, I would take a practice test, but not timed. I would just let myself slowly work through each problem, and I would spend the amount of time that I needed to on it, and I would try to figure it out. And then if I got stuck, I would ask someone for help. I would look online. I would figure out the right answer. And I would always look at the correct answer and figure out how they got to that answer. And once I understood that, I would create my own set of notes where I wrote those strategies down. And then I just slowly went through practice tests like that. And creating your notes really makes it stick in your brain. Another example is my history classes, like AP World History or AP US History. I would go through one of the prep books and highlight information that I thought was important and then turn them into questions, which then I would put into Quizlet, and then I would have this whole set of questions along with vocab words and other key terms that I should know, and I would test myself on it all the time, whether I was just like sitting on the train going to school or sitting at home. Self-testing is actually one of the best strategies to studying, by the way. Yes, to wrap up that point, I think you gain a lot of valuable skills through taking AP classes, and it challenges you and it gets you ready for the workload that you're gonna have in college. Okay, but not also college, like also I would say the workforce even too. But all of that really depends on you and your motivation and your work ethic and what you're willing to put into the class. Last but not least, I want to recognize that AP tests do cost money, and that might be another factor that influences whether or not you take the class or the test. AP tests can be really expensive. I think per AP test, at least for my school or the way it worked where I was, I don't know, it was like $99 per test. So if you're taking like 4 or like 6 APs or whatever, like that's a lot of money. And like per year, I was really fortunate to receive financial aid for my tests from my school, but I understand that some other schools and places just don't offer that. So yeah, those are the pros and cons of taking an AP class. At the end of the day, I would say, yes, it's a good idea to do it for the college rigor in the application process, for the credit, if the college that you end up going to fulfills that, for the skills you gain that will benefit you whether you go to college or not, and for the knowledge. Alright, so if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. You can check out other videos that I have about the college application process for several different schools or my life at Stanford, anything you want to find. That's it for today. I'll see you guys later.